The latest YouGov poll shows that Labour will be wiped out in most seats, and we're talking about the reason behind it and why the Tories cannot be complacent. Right, so last night the Times and YouGov published their latest detailed polls based on constituencies, the same model that have previously predicted the right and correct election results. Especially 2017, where everyone thought it's going to be completely different. This model predicted the right result. And we're talking about the reason behind it and why the Tories cannot be complacent. Firstly, let's talk about what's been actually happening. So the recent model shows that Boris Johnson and the Conservatives are headed for a big majority. This is based on the fact that they will get 359 seats compared to Labour getting 211 seats. Based on this model, the Tories will obviously get a majority. The Lib Dems will get one extra seat from 12 to 13. Obviously, the Brexit Party and smaller parties won't get anything new, and that's the whole point of the first past the post system. The SNP see a bit of a comeback with getting 8 new seats, back from the Tories and Labour, and the rest will go on. This is comparing to the 2017 results. In 2017, obviously, the Tories got the 317 seats. Labour got 262 seats, which was a pretty good result for Jeremy Corbyn. Lib Dems got 12. The SNP went down to 35. And this is how everything played out. The map would show that the majority of the country, apart from the actual cities and urban areas, will turn completely blue. This is quite unpredicted in terms of, if you consider the fact that the Conservatives have been in power since 2010 for 9 years, this shouldn't be happening. And this is what Parliament will look like if you compare it to, again, 2017. The Conservatives will have the majority. But now, obviously, this model has been right in the past. At the same time, you can't take it for granted because things could change. One side might mess up. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn could mess up even more, but you never know. The Conservatives, if they're not careful, they could mess up too. But even if they do, they could still get a smaller majority rather than an actual hung parliament, but you never know. Now, this is the first election since 1966 that's predicted for the opposition, which is Labour, to not gain any new seats. And that's huge. You might think Jeremy Corbyn is incompetent and Labour are absolutely ridiculously mental. But it's a big thing. We had Michael Foot in the 80s, 1983 and so on, where even he managed to gain new seats. And this is the first time since 1966 where the opposition party won't gain any new seats. Mr. Corbyn is on course to lose 51 constituencies. Labour will win 211 seats, 2 more than Foot, and fail to make any gains according to the YouGov modelling, which predicts the party will lose 44 seats to the Conservatives, 5 to the SNP and 1 to the Liberal Democrats. Now, obviously, I have to keep clarifying that this is just a model. It's not the actual result. The only poll that matters is the 12th of December, the actual election, and people could change their mind. At the same time, this model has been right in the past compared to the other polling companies and the structures that they had where they couldn't predict the right result, whether it was Brexit or Donald Trump in 2016. But that was a whole different model because that wasn't based on first past the post. That was more based on the nationwide votes. And at the same time, it doesn't really look good for Labour and whatever they've been doing with the rhetoric to scaremonger people based on the NHS and the whole US trade deal hasn't been working. Of the 58 seats predicted to change hands on the December the 12th, 44 are Tory gains from Labour. However, Labour is within 3 points of retaining 16 of the seats that the model has predicted. That means Labour are going into this election on a more defensive basis. They are there to simply defend their existing seats rather than aim to gain a new seats, because that's almost impossible. And it goes back to the whole point of the Brexit Party, because the Brexit Party in certain seats, they actually help the Conservatives, but don't get too excited. It doesn't apply to all seats, including northern seats. There are still a lot of seats in the north and in the Midlands where the Brexit Party actually is still stopping the Tories from winning. And I know we always have this divide between the Tory supporters and the Brexit Party supporters, but that's all irrelevant at this point because it's about Remain and Leave. It's about Jeremy Corbyn's communism and, as Theresa May said, strong and stable government. So this doesn't apply because at this point, now that the nominations are completely in and the candidates are there, we have to be objective. There are some seats that Brexit Party aren't helping, but at the same time, there were a lot of seats where the Brexit Party have pulled out because there are already a Conservative MP or a candidate there. In fact, certain seats, it would have probably helped if we had a Brexit candidate. And we'll see how the actual election goes. But in terms of the reasoning behind it, why is this happening? The Tories have been in government for 9 years, over 9 years. This should not be happening. At this point, the opposition party should be leading at least by 10 points. And we know that Jeremy Corbyn has his own issues on a personal level, as a character, but also in terms of the campaigning structure. Both the Lib Dems and Labour have played this campaign and election completely wrong. Firstly, Labour, what do they stand for? Brexit-wise, but this is a Brexit election. And Jeremy Corbyn's position is to be on the fence. We make fun of him. At the same time, it is a position. And that's fair enough. That's why they're still polling at 32%, 34% or whatever. So it's not completely ridiculous. There are some people out there in the country, Remainers, who would prefer Jeremy Corbyn's position compared to Joe Swinson, because Joe Swinson and the Labour Party, the Lib Dems have gone completely radical. They no longer want to have a second referendum. They want to completely revoke Article 50 and cancel Brexit, which is a bit too much for a lot of Remainers out there. So Jeremy Corbyn is actually quite unintentionally smart in a way that he's proposing a vague, fake deal with a second referendum. So that's why they are doing a lot better than the Lib Dems. But at the same time, the whole campaign and leadership is incompetent. For example, this interview that Barry Gardiner did with Andrew Neil proved that point.
See what he said? Imagine opening a 5-figure bill for your cancer treatment. Imagine paying to give birth, paying to have a checkup at the GP. This is not only a plot against our NHS, it's a plot against our whole country. Where in these documents does it say we'll be getting 5-figure bills for cancer treatment?
You will recall that in his speech this morning, Jeremy Corbyn actually quoted the differential prices. It was for one particular drug, which is more than 5 times the cost if we get it from America than it is from the way in which we procure it in the UK.
Where does the document say we're going to have to pay for a checkup at the GP?
It doesn't say that.
So
Yeah, it doesn't say that. And that's the whole point. It doesn't say that. They've been going around spreading this fake news on this whole NHS Donald Trump US trade deal. He just admitted it doesn't say that. Nobody believes this. I mean, there are some people who believe this, but luckily we had the majority of journalists and the Westminster hacks and newspapers going around exposing the truth. Unfortunately, the mainstream media, the broadcasters, the BBC, Sky News, Channel 4, they haven't. They're not actually scrutinising the Labour's position. Andrew Neil is a unique character when it comes to the BBC's mentality. He completely scrutinised and destroyed Barry Gardiner and Jeremy Corbyn's arguments. But have we seen Sky News or the BBC actually creating a segment or a headline saying that actually what Labour say, we get their point, but it's actually not in the document? Of course they don't. And there are a number of reasons behind it, but it's not the case. And this is the point with the problem with Barry Gardiner. And actually, let's watch the rest of this interview and see how he does.
that is a possibility.
Well, because it's something that has been mentioned, as you well know, by Tory policy advisors in the
It
past.
is not Conservative policy
Not at the
to
moment,
pay.
it's not.
Where does it say we'd have to pay to give birth in these documents?
Andrew, what it does say in these
No, I'm asking you, where does it say that? Because that's what your leader's claiming.
You see, it's very easy to say what a document doesn't say and just to go through a list, but that's not the point.
Now, Barry Gardiner and Labour are not the only ones, because Joe Swinson is also completely incompetent. As we said, the Lib Dems have gone completely radical when it comes to their Remain position. At the same time, we have this. Now, Joe Swinson, who has this policy for the Liberal Democrats to reach a net zero emission by 2045, which is kind of interesting, she completely forgot this. The Lib Dem manifesto committed to net zero emissions by 2045. They've said that to achieve our net zero climate targets by 2045, we aim to reduce emissions from surface transport to near zero. At the same time, the transport to electric vehicles and from private to public transport will drastically cut air pollution. And obviously, this has taken Jo Swinson just 7 days to forget that commitment, this was yesterday when she tweeted that by staying in the European Union, we can tackle the climate emergency together and set a binding net zero target of 2050. Now, the 2050 target is a Conservative target, and I know that a lot of Labour people keep making fun of the Lib Dems, saying, oh, the Lib Dems are just like the Tories. Obviously, they're not. But in this case, they are like the Tories. They've gone with the Tory target accidentally. This shows how much she actually cares, or doesn't actually, and how much of this whole campaign is just gimmicks. The same applies to the Labour Party, but specifically the Lib Dems. And this is exactly why people aren't convinced when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn or Jo Swinson when it comes to their campaign promises. Now, on a separate note, when it comes to the Tory party and Boris Johnson. Now, you guys remember a few days ago, I defended Boris Johnson for deciding to keep his tea bag in the teacup when he was making tea, and when he added milk to it, everybody criticized him and said, no, that makes sense, that's how you do it. It's the best way to actually get a proper level of how much darker you want your tea to be. At the same time, today Boris Johnson has crossed the line, and I feel like I can no longer support him. He was in Cornwall and he was having scones. We all know the divide in this country between, when it comes to scones, would you rather put cream on first or jam? And I know that this channel, a lot of you will be divided too, but the logical side, and facts don't care about your feelings, you have to go cream first, not jam. It makes absolutely no sense. Cream first. Boris Johnson went jam first.
The reason for putting the jam on first is because jam is adhesive. Yeah. Right. Well, you're doing it the Cornish way. I'm doing it the Cornish way. We're different.
Yes, this is our Prime Minister, and I feel like I can no longer support him. So this is Boris Johnson. Jokes aside, we are going to be covering the rest of the this week and the news that's been happening, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out from Labour HQ in the next couple of days apparently, so we'll be covering this on this channel, and so make sure that you subscribe and click on the bell next to it so you get notified when I release a new video, and make sure that you follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you're not already, to stay up to date with all the latest Brexit rants and election news. And if you want to check out our merchandise page, you could find the link in the description. We have the new t-shirts, All I Want for Christmas is Brexit, but also the Get Brexit Done, Make Britain Independent Again. As always, I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys in the next video.